Welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, the place where whispers turn into stories and the heart has room to speak. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, and consider hitting join if you want to help us keep telling the kinds of human tales that live between the headlines and the truth. Today's story isn't only about celebrity, or romance, or endings. It's about memory and courage, about a love that doesn't disappear, but changes shape, and the moment someone finally dares to name it out loud. Because sometimes healing doesn't arrive when we move on. It arrives when we finally decide to talk. In the fast-paced world of Turkish television, where everyone shines brightly and every glance can become a headline, actress Ebru Şahin has always seemed unshakable. Elegant, steady, careful with her private life, she carried a calm that made her admired and distant all at once. But composure is not the same as stillness. Beneath that poise, there were feelings that years could not soften. Recently, a quiet moment in a therapist's office changed everything. A person close to Ebru shared that she had begun therapy to face emotions she had tucked away for a long time, emotions tied to none other than Akınözü, her former co-star and once rumored partner. No one imagined what would rise to the surface behind those closed doors. Those familiar with the session say the room was still when Ebru's voice gently broke through, carrying a confession that seemed to suspend time. She said there were truths she had never voiced, truths that belonged to Akin. It was simple and devastating at once, and it rippled far beyond that office. For the people who had watched their on-screen chemistry and wondered if something deeper flickered between them, her admission felt like both confirmation and an ache, a door opening that no one expected to see again. Later, when the therapist asked why she hadn't shared those feelings before, Ebru's reply, as reported, was careful and tender, because speaking them felt like risking something precious, something she still valued even if it no longer existed in the way it once had. The reaction was immediate. Within hours, timelines lit up. Fans wrote that some loves leave an imprint time can't erase, that there are bonds the heart understands long after the mind has tried to forget. But the most startling part wasn't the nostalgia. It was the honesty. In an industry where sentences are polished and guarded, Ebru's openness felt unvarnished, present, and deeply human. Those who saw notes from the session said it didn't end there. She described a single night that never stopped echoing. She recalled the last time she saw him, how she let him go without saying what needed saying, believing her quiet would explain what words couldn't. Only later did she recognize the cost of that silence. For anyone who remembered their final shared event, that image felt haunting, two people connected, separated by a pause that never truly ended. Meanwhile, Akınözü, known for keeping his private life tucked away, had been taking his own measure of the past. In a recent interview, when asked about former loves, he answered with a line that held more weight than it seemed to carry on the surface. He suggested that some things could only be understood heart to heart. The phrase immediately reignited speculation, a poetic gesture many took as a subtle nod toward Ebru, an acknowledgement wrapped in restraint. People close to him later claimed that when he learned of Ebru's therapy revelation, he sat in silence for a while before uttering a quiet truth: she had always been braver than he was when it came to emotion. Though never confirmed on the record, those words raced from outlet to outlet, turning what looked like rumor into something softer and more profound, two people meeting in hindsight, not to rewrite history, but to understand it. Just when it felt like the story had revealed its most intimate layer, another piece emerged. Ebru had written a letter to Akin months before, a letter she never mailed, but kept folded neatly where she could feel it near. In it, she didn't argue, didn't accuse, didn't beg for another chance. She simply asked him not to hold her memory with pain, and admitted that in her quiet moments she still wished him well. She wrote that he had been both shelter and storm, a paradox that only the heart could reconcile. The mere existence of that letter shifted the public's tone from curiosity to empathy. It wasn't about whether love remained. It was about how people live with what once was, and how they carry it forward without bitterness. Days later came the most delicate request of all. Word spread that Ebru had asked for a special therapy session where the two of them could be present together, face to face, to speak at last and give this long thread of feeling an ending that felt honest. No one knew whether he would accept. According to sources, Akin asked for time, saying he wasn't sure if he was ready to hear everything she had to say. As the days stretched out, fans posted messages of hope, kindness, and prayer, writing that sometimes what's needed isn't a reunion but a final conversation, soft and true. What about you, dear listeners? Would you have done what Ebru did, choosing to open a door you long ago closed? Would you seek a last moment of clarity with someone who once mattered more than anything, or let the hush remain and find comfort inside it? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this remind you why we feel so deeply, please like this video, subscribe, and consider joining our Turkish Spotlight Secrets family. Your support keeps stories like this alive, beating and human. As the week unfolded, both actors seemed to shift in quiet, parallel ways, as if each was moving through the same corridor from opposite ends. A friend close to Akin revealed a sentence that felt like it came from somewhere beyond pride. He said she had taught him what it meant to love without conditions, and that if he could step backward in time, he would not let pride do the talking for him. That line, stripped of glamour, made of regret and tenderness, resonated with anyone who has ever wished to go back for the single conversation that might have changed everything. On Ebru's side, the sessions continued. Those present described one moment they couldn't forget. After hearing the observation that sometimes those who love the most cause the most hurt because they hope to be understood without speaking, Ebru began to cry. She whispered that she too had wanted to be understood without explaining every corner of her heart. Those who saw her leave said the air felt new, as if the room had been washed clean. Not long after, she told a confidant that maybe this was what she needed, to look at him without the old anger. It wasn't a promise of reconciliation. It was something quieter, a promise of peace. Akin's most vulnerable moment arrived where no one expected, under a spotlight, trophy in hand. Standing at a podium, applause folding around him, he paused, then offered a line that felt like a message disguised as gratitude. Some stories don't conclude, they learn a different way to breathe. The ovation that followed wasn't only for his accomplishment. People recognized the truth inside the sentence, and many heard in it a gentle tribute to Ebru, a small bow toward a love transformed, but not denied. Soon, the pairing of their names began trending again in conversation, with fans sharing old photos, quiet clips, and their own reflections. Not every love needs a happy ending. Some simply need rest, a soft place to land. Maybe that is the heart of this chapter. Love doesn't always come back. Sometimes it just stops hurting, and that is where the healing begins. A therapist once said that when love ceases to ache, it finally has room to mend. Perhaps the story of Ebru and Akin isn't a tale of rekindling but of releasing, forgiving what was and carrying it forward gently, without the weight of what might have been. What do you believe, friends? Can there be true closure without a reunion? Or does every unfinished story deserve one last meeting in the open air? Share your thoughts below. If this touched your heart, please like, subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, and tap join to help us continue sharing intimate, human stories that remind us of who we are. Until next time, be kind, stay curious, and remember, silence is not emptiness. Sometimes, silence is love finally finding its quiet place to rest.